Good afternoon from San Antonio, Texas, home of the gateway to the U.S. Air Force, aka Lackland Air Force Base. This is Matt Shearer, and this is part of the Transition Highway. We've come up with a new podcast theme. It's called The Transition Highway, and joining me today is my good friend Keith Cassant. Keith, how are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you doing today, Matt?
Good. For those who have not listened to us before, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Name's Keith Cassant. I'm retired Army, about 22 years in. Now, I'm currently employed as a federal civilian with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA for short. Prior to that, I was federal civilian with the Coast Guard for a little bit, and prior to that, I was a year and a half with Wells Fargo, and that was all post-military time. So, when I transitioned out of the military, my transition was a little tumultuous, so it gave me a huge heart to get back to the community. So in addition to my full-time job, I'm also very, very active in the service member transition space in mentoring and helping service members make that journey from military and uniform life to t-shirts and baseball caps and beards in the civilian world.
And you've been through a couple job interviews, and you conducted a few job interviews. So we're going to go from your perspective. In a previous episode, we talked about the types of interviews, like the robotic interview, the phone interview, and the actual interview, and the kinds of interviews that people could face. Today, we're going to talk about the actual interview. And so with that, let's get started. Right, screen. Number one, right? Always be prepared. And how would you say people should be prepared before they go to any job interview?
Oh, well, that's a loaded question, man. So I could go on for hours with that one. As far as the preparation goes, obviously, preparation physically as well as mentally, and even within that mental space is not just the being in the right headspace to step into that room or into that video call or whatever it might be, but also doing your homework prior, right? So, I'll kind of unpack that in a couple different levels. So, first, you want to do some homework, right? Really, you should have done that when you were applying for the jobs. But if you, for whatever haven't, maybe you hadn't done a whole lot of research on the organization, you want to step into an interview knowing not only just the job itself, but what's some of the history of the organization. When I interviewed for Wells Fargo, one of the questions very early on in the interviews, what do you know about Wells Fargo? And I had done my homework. So when I was able to talk about the Stagecoach and the fact that Wells Fargo for one period of time was actually running the Pony Express, things like that really, I actually saw the joy on my interviewer's face when I mentioned that stuff. She's like, okay, he's done his homework. And then of course, being prepared, dressing properly, wearing professional looking clothing, but where it's also fits well. So you're not constricted. You're not, it's not tight around the neck if you're, wearing a suit and tie kind of thing, breathing room, if you will, because that helps with the psyche, right? Of I feel comfortable, but I look good. That helps with the confidence level. And then again, that mental space, right? You're going to be stressed out. It's natural. You're not going to be totally comfortable in there, but giving yourself that pep talk right before you step into the room, be it virtual, physical, or phone call, or whatever it might be. Having that pep talk of, okay, I prepared, I've got this, this is what I've been getting ready to do, not having the thoughts of, oh my God, I'm not ready, or what if I don't do well? You can't have those kinds of thoughts. You gotta have the positive thoughts going in there, which I love. Slide feeds perfectly into that.
So the thing I would tell people, and I know you've said this before, is practice with someone that knows you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And shouldn't it be someone that knows you, but it'll also give you constructive feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. One phrase that I didn't come up with myself, but one of my mentors told me, I love it, is have someone in your life who has your best interest at heart, but is not impressed by you. That goes in line. Yeah, somebody that can give it to you raw, give it to you real, but they have your best interest in heart. They're not like putting you down just to put you down, right? They're giving you constructive, positive feedback on how you can improve. So, and that goes with the interview process, right? Practice with someone who knows you, who has your best interest at heart, who wants the best for you, but isn't afraid to tell you what you need to work on and what you might need to change.
So let me just share a little picture about this story. So I've used this picture a lot. And a friend of ours, Kelly Dankus, said, that reminds me of Grandma Dankus. And so, you know, the Grandma Dankuses of the world are the kind of people that will tell you to you straight. So you want to have someone that's going to be able to tell it to you straight. But what if you can't find other organizations? Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the Military Transition Roundtable, because they're a sponsor of today's program. You know, we work with other professional organizations throughout the U.S. And if you are in military transition in some form, we want you to reach out to us. We'll put my contact info, we'll put Keith's contact info, because Keith is a facilitator with us. So you can reach out to us and get more information about the Military Transition Roundtable. And you can find us at militarytransitionroundtable.com. But let's go back to other organizations. For example, these are 4 organizations that I belong to. And all of those, I think, are people that I could find as mentors, as influencers, and also people that I could practice my job interview skills. Am I missing something here?
No, those are absolutely valid organizations. And I'm affiliated with a couple of them as well myself. You know, the thing is, if you can kind of hit the full gamut, right? Not only a nonprofit, but a nonprofit that has, like, somebody who has experience. Like, you know, I have 6 years of hiring manager experience, so I've been on both sides of that table. In addition to all the research that I've done to help with my mentorship. You know, but there's definitely other nonprofits out there. You know, those are some of the very, very, big ones for all things veterans. But, you know, you got Hire Heroes USA. I'm a volunteer with them, and I've done mock interviews for folks that they've sent my way. American Corporate Partners is also a very, very valuable organization that they'll usually pair you with somebody. A lot of times those people are in hiring manager roles that are doing the mentoring. So you know, it's find somebody who has your best interests at heart, which a lot of these nonprofits do, and then, but aren't impressed by you and just want to be able to give you the real deal and help coach and mentor you along the way.
So let's talk about the actual clothes for the job interview. You were talking about it a minute ago with making sure the suit fits, making sure the tie is not constricting. What kind of colors would you wear in a job interview?
Ooh, good question. Oh man. So personally, there's a couple different things. So personally, like me, I have a specific suit, specific tie that I wear to all interviews. I'll let folks do their own research, right? But there is science behind colors and what they kind of portray and what they mean. There's power colors and things like that. So color wise, look up what power, there's multiple different power colors. I mean, you can't go wrong with traditional black and white, but blue, even purple, they have little subliminal nuances to them. And so maybe how you want to portray yourself might actually have a role to play in that. Like I have a tie that I love. It's actually a little bit of silver, a little bit of blue, and a little bit of purple. So to me, it kind of matches some of those colors I'm going for. I don't want to say you don't want to go too extreme, super bright neon colors or anything like that. But
like the ones you see at an NBA draft party?
Exactly. Yeah. Teach their own, right? I'm sure some folks have worn them and still been offered the job. I'm not knocking that, but research that. What do colors mean, right? A lot of people think, oh, red is love. And subliminally, a lot of times red means aggression. So I encourage folks stay away from the color red a lot of times in an interview, because again, it's all subliminal, but there's science and there's studies behind it. So that's absolutely a very, very important piece to consider.
So obviously the next thing is you want to get there to the job a few minutes early. How much time would you allot before you arrive for a job interview?
Oh, absolutely no less than 15 minutes. But, our primary audience is going to be military. So that's hopefully not a huge issue anyway. We get ingrained to us. If you're on time, you're late. Personally, I'm such a worry wart, if you will. I'm generally showing up like half an hour early. But whatever is comfortable for you. You know yourself, how your stress levels tend to get in situations like this. So, if you need to show up a little earlier to give yourself more of that pep talk, do that. If you need to maybe show up right at the 15-minute mark, because you know yourself well enough that if you show up too early, you're going to actually catastrophize and psych yourself out in that period of time, then yeah, maybe show up closer to that 15-minute mark. But you don't show up on time. They might be ahead of schedule, and yeah, they're doing multiple interviews, so they love nothing more if they can start early if given the opportunity. They may be behind schedule too, so be prepared for that. But I would say at least 15 minutes early. And yeah, and then again, that gives you that time to, okay, I'm here. Let me mentally prep. Let me give myself that pep talk. Get rid of all the negative thoughts. Fill my head with positive thoughts. Maybe do a quick review of my resume. Maybe you have it on your phone. You do a quick jogging of the memory that all the things you're going to pull from your resume and your experiences. Yeah, and get yourself prepared and deep breaths to go into that room and or on that phone call and kick rear end.
And of course, you want to make sure you just take a quick side trip to the restroom to check your tie, to make sure your clothes are aligned properly, and maybe Absolutely. The sweat, if it's been a hot day or something like that, just to kind of.
Yeah, we're not racehorses, right? So they say go into the bathroom like a racehorse for a reason, right? Because racehorses they supposedly, from what I heard, they feed them or give them a bunch of liquids and stuff so they run faster. That's not how we work as humans, right? It's the exact opposite. The nerves make us have to go to the bathroom. So if we're, and taking a lot of fluids and stuff, yeah, nothing worse than the urge hits you halfway through that interview. So as silly as it might sound, professional athletes do the same thing. A lot of them will use the bathroom, use the restroom right before a big event or a big competition or something.
Yeah, and speaking of the restroom, you want to avoid drinking lots of coffee or caffeine prior to the job interview, because you want to be not really shaky or moving too quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about, obviously, you want to have some copies of the resume. How should the resume look, and what kind of stock of paper would you put in giving that to them?
Yeah. So so much digital today, but obviously, yeah, especially if you go to networking events in person or hiring events even in person, that piece of paper can say a lot, right? So go to Office Max or wherever maybe, and get some of that. I'm not a paper expert, but that nicer stock of paper, just a little bit more firm, a higher quality piece of paper that's professionally printed, right? If your home printer is running out of ink and it's leaving shaded areas, halfway down the page, then obviously, yeah, you don't want to be handing those resumes out. Because if you haven't networked your way in, which network is a whole nother topic in and of itself, but if you haven't networked your way in, besides them, you walking up to that person and how you physically look in that moment, that piece of paper is going to be one of the very first impressions they have of you. So you want to make sure it is professional as can be when you hand it over to them.
So we talked about this before, if you got there just a few minutes before and you're sitting there waiting for your job interview, maybe they run behind. This is a good time to get out the phone and go look some people up on LinkedIn and get some background about them. What would you do when you're in this stage of the pre-job preparation there, Keith?
Absolutely. So, especially if maybe you didn't do a cover letter or something with your resume where you were able to talk about some of the soft stuff. And what I mean by soft is like the values, the ethos, the ethics, the vision, right? Every company, I shouldn't say every, because I'm sure there's some that aren't, but all your major companies, especially, they're going to have websites, and their websites are going to, like that little about us section, right? They're going to have a mission statement. They're going to have a vision statement. They may have values listed. Those are important things. 9 times out of 10, that hiring manager is going to know what those are. And they may not be looking necessarily actively looking, but if they start to hear some of those buzzwords from their own value statement from their company, that's going to help, hey, this person's done their homework. They know who we are. They've researched us, which tells them they want to be here. And there's, hiring managers, they want to know that you want to be there, right? So beyond just telling them, so show that you put in the effort to show that, yeah, I'm invested in this opportunity and I want to be with your organization.
So it goes to that tie back we had a few minutes ago where you're talking about the Wells Fargo and the Pony Express. So obviously having those kind of remarks will impress the interviewer, but what else could you do? I mean, you can look at a person's LinkedIn profile and see where they went to school, see where your commonalities are, because that gets into a point we're going to make in just a second. But before we do that, let's talk about what happens when accidents happen or traffic situations occur. what would you suggest people tell their job interview when something that they can't control happens?
Just be honest. It's funny. I actually just a gentleman that I'm mentoring. I just had a call with him today, and he was actually telling me this literally just happened to him. His roommate had a medical emergency and had to go to the ER, and this was actually 2 days ago. But that roommate is still in the ER at this point, and so he was telling me that he had an interview scheduled for yesterday, and he's like, I'm taking care of my best friend here. So he contacted the recruiter. He didn't have the hiring manager directly, but he contacted the recruiter and told them the situation. But again, we're all human, right? And again, as long as you're showing, I want this opportunity, but this emergency has come up, whether, and maybe it's an accident or whatever it might be, maybe not medical, but yeah, maybe you broke down, whatever it might be, just be honest, be genuine, be authentic. And just, yeah, I mean, 9 times out of 10, they don't need to make a decision on who they're going to select for that position, by the end of that day. So if you have something happen and you say, hey, I can interview, within the next day or two, most of the time they'll be willing to help you. And that's the guy I was mentoring and I talked to today. His interview actually I think it actually probably just wrapped up. It was set for today because he couldn't make it yesterday.
So there you are in the job interview. We've done that research. We've learned a little bit about the person we're interviewing. We have the company culture. What would be the first thing you would say after they greet you?
Generally speaking, when they greet you, they're going to ask about you or ask you to talk a little bit about yourself. They'll probably introduce themselves if it's a panel, especially, who each of them are. But yeah, I mean, this is when the showtime starts. So have your intro ready. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. Two that I kind of subscribe to is either just like the elevator pitch, what do you bring to the table? I can talk about myself all day long, but you don't necessarily want to know about my kids and where I went to high school and stuff. But when I say, my name is Keith Cassant, my background is in human resources. And, one of the biggest challenges I find that in today's field of human resources is, the recruiting and retention of good people. And that's what I'm here to solve. I'm here to, again, I'm kind of spitballing like I'm going for a recruiting job, right? But that's how I would approach it. Here's a problem within the industry that I see, and here's how I'm ready to resolve it and fix that issue. So that's one way. And then another way I've heard, I actually haven't used it myself, but I've heard I like it is, start off about yourself and then list some of your skills. And I love this. Pause and say, based on some of the things I just said, is there anything else you'd like? Is there based on some of the skills that I'm bringing to the table, is there anything else you'd like to know a little bit more about? Or, should I just, or is there anything I can drill down further on? Or can I, again, go back to that problem solving, or can I, talk about some of the ways that I can resolve or be of value, I should say, be of value to your organization.
I think this is where you go back to, you look at the actual job description. If there's something that's specific that they're looking for, this is probably the time to say, this is what I've done in the past to help my organization meet these objectives or something like that. So it shows you've done your homework, and it shows that this is how you see yourself as a fit within the company.
Absolutely.
Then the other thing, of course, and we always stress this, is don't let them just ask the questions. You should have some questions too. So what are some of the questions that you would ask if you're sitting there as a job candidate?
Sure. So yeah, always have questions. I would say no more than 3. So just a quick practical application. So no more than 3. I would say 2 is a good number. If you have a third burning question you want to ask, that's great. But yeah, after 3, it's starting to be a little much. But yeah, make them impactful questions. Make them like questions that show them like I think critically about things, right? Questions like, oh, what's the timeline? When can I expect to hear back? If you can, save those questions for the recruiter. I mean, they're important questions. Don't get me wrong. That's something you want to know. But if you can get that question posed to the recruiter rather than the hiring manager, then yeah, you can hone in on these 3 questions. So what I like to tell folks is what's important to you that you want to know, right? Besides timeline of the job and even benefits and salary, that's all That's either down the road or that's something you can discuss with the recruiter. But what else is important to you, right? Something like company culture. I am huge about the environment of an organization. So like leadership styles and stuff are very important to me. So a question I ask that I like to throw out there, and it's a non-accusatory, but it's a non-aggressive question, but it's going to tell me what I want to know. And so for me, how I gauge culture is I love to ask, what is the company's policy on handling or dealing with underperforming employees, right? And what I get back, that's going to, because I ask, what's the company's policy, right? I'm not asking what your policy is, but chances are what I get back from the interviewer is going to be their take on that policy. And so if I start hearing things about like, written policies and upholding standards and yada, 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 and I don't hear anything about, hey, what's going on with this person, then there's a chance that this isn't the environment I want to be in, right? I'm expecting or wanting to hear the employer talk about, hey, I want to get to the bottom of this with this person. I want to sit down with this person and say, hey, what's going on? Is something going on at home? Is there something going on at work? Is there some way that we can help you get back up to standard? And that's just one example, right? Because that's what's important to me. So come up with questions that are impactful like that. That same question that I just posed, I posed that on almost all my interviews. And every single time they're like, oh, that's a heavy question, but they've appreciated it. So make sure you have very impactful and thoughtful questions.
So I'm just going to take a real slight commercial here to talk a little bit about my work. If you would like to reach out to me, here's how you reach out to me. You'll find this video on my YouTube channel, and it will also be posted on my medium.com channel. So by all means, feel free to reach out to me in those ways. I look at all of those. Definitely tell you LinkedIn is probably the #1 way to reach out to me. So that kind of wraps up today's session from San Antonio, Texas, home of the San Antonio Missions, which are a UNESCO historic site. This is Matt Shear with my friend Keith Cassant. Be looking for another installment when we talk about networking and some of the other hidden aspects of finding that job. This is Matt Shear with the Military Transition Roundtable. Thank you for joining us and hope to see you soon.